Have you ever sat across the table from your grown child, maybe over a cup of coffee, and heard them say something that didn't sit right with you? Something that made your stomach twist just a little, but you brushed it off. Because after all, they're your child. You love them. You've watched them grow from a tiny baby in your arms to a grown adult with their own opinions, dreams, and struggles. So when they say something harsh or dismissive, you tell yourself it's nothing. They're tired. They didn't mean it like that. Maybe I'm just being too sensitive. But what if I told you that sometimes those little comments are more than just words? What if they're signs? Clear signs that the relationship may be off balance, and worse, that it might be harming you? I'm not talking about the usual disagreements. Every parent and adult child goes through tough conversations. That's part of life. But I'm talking about patterns, about phrases that point to a deeper issue. Words that, when repeated or said with intention, don't just sting, they slowly chip away at your dignity, your confidence, and your peace of mind. This video isn't about giving up on your children. It's about standing up for yourself. It's about knowing when a line has been crossed. And having the strength to step back, even from those you love, when they no longer treat you with love and respect. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard your child say, "You were never really there for me," with bitterness in their voice? Even after you worked 2 jobs, made endless sacrifices, and gave every part of yourself to raise them? That cuts deep, doesn't it? It makes you question everything. But here's what I want you to remember. You weren't perfect, but you gave what you had. And when someone refuses to see that, when they're so focused on blame that they overlook your love, it's time to protect your peace. So let's talk about those phrases. The ones that don't just hurt but reveal something much bigger, something much more dangerous to your spirit. The first phrase. You owe me. It might not come out in those exact words. Sometimes it sounds like, "After everything I've been through because of you." Or, "I wouldn't be struggling if you had done a better job." The message is the same. You owe them your time, your money, your guilt. It's as if they're holding your love hostage, waiting for you to pay a debt you never agreed to. But that's not love. That's manipulation. Real love from a grown child comes with gratitude, not demands. Yes, they have a right to express pain and ask questions. But when they begin to weaponize your past, your role as a parent, when they demand repayment for your sacrifices, that's when the relationship becomes toxic. You do not owe your adult children your retirement fund. You do not owe them your emotional energy every single day, especially when it's not being met with appreciation. If guilt is being used to control you, that's not family. That's emotional blackmail. The second phrase. You're just old. You wouldn't understand. Now this one hurts in a quieter way. It's not shouted. It's subtle. But it cuts deep. Because suddenly, it's like your entire life, your wisdom, your experiences, your lessons, counts for nothing. You've lived through things your child can't even imagine. You've endured wars, recessions, heartbreak, loss, joy, and miracles. And all of that is dismissed, with one word, old. Let me tell you something right now. Your age is not a weakness. It is your power. You've survived what others may never even face. And that deserves respect, not dismissal. When your own child uses your age to silence you, to ignore your insight or experience, they're not being modern or progressive. They're being disrespectful. And you don't have to accept that. You have every right to speak. Every right to guide. Every right to be heard. Especially when it comes from love, age is not a weakness, it's a strength. And if someone you raised forgets that, it's not your job to convince them. It's your job to protect your worth. Sometimes, protecting your worth means stepping back, emotionally or even physically, until they remember who you are, and everything you've given. Now, the third phrase that should raise every red flag in your heart is this: if you don't help me, I'll figure it out without you. At first, it might sound independent, even admirable. But listen closely. What's the tone behind it? Is it said with maturity and strength, or is it a quiet threat? Is it a sign of self-reliance, or an ultimatum designed to pressure you into doing what they want? Too often, adult children use this kind of language as a tool for manipulation. They create false choices. Either you give them what they want, or they cut you off. And as a parent, that's terrifying. The fear of being shut out, of losing connection, of no longer being needed, can make you give in again, and again. But that kind of dynamic? That's not built on love. It's built on fear. And real love is never a threat. Sincere love sounds like, I need your help, and I appreciate it. Not, give it to me, or I'll leave. If your child only comes close when they need something. If their warmth, their affection, their interest depends on what you provide. Then what you have isn't a relationship. It's a transaction. And you, dear soul, are worth far more than that. You've spent decades building your life, your home, your memories. This chapter of your life is meant to be peaceful. It's meant to be filled with rest, joy, meaning, and genuine connection, not demands, pressure, or walking on eggshells. And I know, it's not easy to walk away. Even emotionally. Not from someone you love with your whole heart. It goes against every instinct you've had as a parent. But sometimes, love means saying, enough. Sometimes, protecting yourself is the most loving thing you can do. Because it teaches the other person how to treat you. It sets a boundary that says, I will not be hurt like this anymore. You're not abandoning your child by drawing a line. You're reminding them. That respect goes both ways. That your value doesn't fade with time. That your love is a gift, not a debt to be collected. And I promise you, the moment you reclaim your dignity, the moment you stop tolerating disrespect, even when it comes from family, you will feel lighter, freer, stronger. Now, let's keep going. Because there are more phrases to talk about. And each one reveals something powerful, not just about how we're being treated, but about what we truly deserve. You see, when someone you love starts treating you like an afterthought. When their words carry more control than care. It's not just disappointing. It's draining. And if that someone happens to be your own child, it's a heartbreak that very few people talk about. But you are not alone. And your feelings are valid. The next phrase to be cautious of is this: you're the reason I turned out this way. Now listen, every parent makes mistakes. That's part of being human. There is no perfect mother. No perfect father. Even the most loving, selfless parents have moments they wish they could change. But when an adult child repeatedly blames you for who they are today, and never takes responsibility for their own choices, it becomes a toxic cycle of blame. You might hear it in moments of conflict, or when they're struggling with life. They might say, if you had been more supportive, I wouldn't have anxiety. Or, if you'd raised me differently, I'd have a better life now. And yes, because you're a parent, those words hit hard. You start revisiting old memories. You question every decision you made. Every time you said no. Every sacrifice you made believing it was the right thing. But here's the truth you need to hold close to your heart. Raising a child does not mean carrying lifelong guilt for their adult choices. They have free will. They've made their own decisions. And those decisions are theirs to own, not yours to carry. Yes, sometimes blaming you might make your child feel better for a moment. It might give them a sense of relief, like they've found the reason for their struggles. But the truth is, it keeps them stuck. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of guilt and shame that isn't yours to carry. You didn't raise a perfect child, just like you weren't a perfect parent. No one is. But if you raised them with love, if you tried your best, if you showed up, even on the hardest days, then you did your job. The rest? That's on them. Don't let them hang their life around your neck like a chain. And if despite your efforts, your patience, your support, your open heart, they still can't have a conversation without dragging you through the past, then maybe it's time to take a step back. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much to keep letting them hurt you like this. Now, there's another phrase that sometimes slips out in anger. Or worse, in a cold, calculated moment. It sounds like this. You never really loved me. If you've ever heard your child say those words, pause. Take a deep breath. Because I know that one sentence cuts deeper than any other. It feels like someone took every hug, every meal you made, every time you waited up late, worried sick, and tossed it all away, like it never mattered. But let's be clear, this phrase, it's not just hurtful. It's cruel. Love isn't always perfect. Sometimes love doesn't look like what people expect. Maybe you weren't overly affectionate. Maybe life forced you to be strong when all you wanted was to be soft. But you gave what you had. And love isn't measured by grand gestures. It's measured by presence. By consistency. By sticking around, by doing the hard things. Even when no one said, thank you. So when someone erases all of that with one sentence, it's not just unfair. It's emotional warfare. It's often used in arguments. To shatter you. To make you surrender. To force you to apologize for things you didn't do. But listen carefully. You cannot spend your golden years defending yourself to someone who has already decided to forget your love. If they can take your heart, your deepest efforts, and turn them into weapons, that's not a child seeking healing. That's someone trying to control you. And sometimes, the strongest act of love is letting go. You don't have to keep proving yourself to someone who's already made up their mind. Real love doesn't need to be convinced. It knows. It sees, even when things aren't perfect. Because if your child truly loved you, they wouldn't aim to break your heart with words like that. They wouldn't want to see you cry. They wouldn't want to be the reason you lie awake in pain. Which brings us to another phrase. One that might seem lighter, less serious, but carries just as much damage. You're just being dramatic. At first, it might sound harmless. It might even be said with a chuckle. But make no mistake. It's not a joke. It's dismissal. It's a way to silence you. To make your feelings seem small, exaggerated, or invalid. How many times in your life have you been told to quiet down? To be strong? To not make a fuss? And as you've gotten older, maybe you've noticed people interrupt more. Talk over you. Smile politely, but don't really listen. So when your own child tells you, you're just being dramatic, it hits differently. Because it confirms a painful belief. That your emotions don't matter anymore. That your wisdom is outdated. That your voice doesn't belong in the room. But let me say this, loud and clear. Your voice matters now more than ever. You've lived. You've learnt. You've endured. You've loved. And your feelings, your stories, are not dramatic. They are full of truth. They are rooted in experience. They are rich with meaning. When someone, especially someone you raised, mocks or minimizes your truth, that's not just disrespect. That's erasure. And you do not have to accept that. You deserve to speak. To be heard. To be respected. Without being laughed at. Without being silenced. And if the people closest to you can't give you the space to be heard, you are absolutely within your rights to create that space yourself. To step back. To draw a boundary. To say, with calm confidence, "No. I will not be dismissed." Because of this chapter of your life, it's not about pleasing people who don't value you. It's about standing strong in who you are. It's about reclaiming peace, dignity, and joy. It's about living fully, without carrying the emotional weight of someone else's immaturity. So as we keep walking through these phrases, I want you to remember. This isn't just about words. It's about patterns. Patterns of disrespect. Patterns of emotional control. Patterns of subtle, ongoing manipulation. And the moment you start to recognize those patterns for what they are, that's the moment you begin to take your power back. This is not about turning your back on your family. It's about turning your face toward yourself. Toward the self-respect, the peace, and the clarity that you've earned. You are not too old to set boundaries. You are not too old to start fresh. You are not too old to say, "That's enough." And if, while hearing these words, a part of your heart aches, if a memory returns, a look, a sentence, a conversation that made you feel small, know this. You are not alone. So many parents carry this quiet, invisible pain. But today, you've done something powerful. You've given yourself permission to name it. And soon, we'll speak about the final phrases that matter most. Because they reveal deep truths about where you stand. And how to move forward with strength. Let's keep going. Now, the next phrase might seem innocent on the surface. But underneath, it carries a message that can quietly erode your sense of value. I didn't ask for your opinion. Now, of course, your adult children have every right to make their own decisions. That's part of growing up. And you've probably accepted that. You've learned to step back and let them live their lives. But when they respond with a sharp, cold, "I didn't ask," or worse, "Nobody wants your opinion," it cuts deeper than they realize. Because what they're really saying is, your wisdom doesn't matter anymore. Your voice isn't welcome here. And that hurts, because you weren't offering advice to control them. You were offering it because you love them. Because you've seen more, lived more, and survived more. Because you care. And when someone treats that care like an inconvenience, when your presence is only accepted if you stay quiet or agree, that's not respect. That's rejection. That's emotional distancing in disguise. If your child constantly brushes off your thoughts, rolls their eyes at your concerns, or makes you feel like your role in their life is conditional, that's not love. That's control. And no parent, no matter how old, deserves to be pushed to the sidelines of their own family. You are allowed to have opinions. You are allowed to speak your truth. Even if they don't follow your advice. They should be able to hear it without contempt. A respectful adult child doesn't have to agree with you. But they should always honor your place in their life. And if they don't, you need to ask yourself a hard but important question. Am I showing up for a relationship that no longer shows up for me? Now, we've saved perhaps the most painful phrase for last. And I want to speak on this one with deep care. It's the moment your child says, "You're the one who needs help, not me." Now, there are times this can be said with kindness. Out of concern, out of love. Maybe you've been struggling with your health, your memory, or your emotions. But that's not the version we're talking about here. We're talking about the moment it's said to invalidate your feelings. To flip the script. To escape responsibility. To make you feel like you're the problem. When all you did was try to set a boundary. Speak up. Or express your hurt. That phrase, when used to deflect accountability, does not care. It's a way to silence you. To confuse you. To make you second-guess your truth. And I want to say this clearly. You are allowed to speak. You are allowed to hurt. You are allowed to expect kindness, especially from your own child. Needing help doesn't make you weak. But being accused of needing help as a way to control you? That's gaslighting. So if you've heard this phrase used to shut you down, to turn things back on you, to undermine your concerns, step back. Take a breath. Hold your ground. Because your voice still matters. Your truth still matters. And you are still allowed to protect your heart. Even from people you love. Now listen, if your child says something like, "You're the one who needs help," and they truly mean it from a place of love and concern. Maybe they've noticed you're struggling or feeling overwhelmed. That's one thing. That's care. That's compassion. But too often, that phrase isn't used to help you. It's used to deflect, to dodge their own responsibility. To turn the conversation away from their actions, and back onto you. Let's say you're trying to address something real. Maybe the way they speak to you. Maybe how they've been distant. Maybe how they've been treating you unfairly. And instead of listening, they look you in the eye and say, "You're the one who's crazy. You need help. You're just being emotional, again." That is not love. That is gaslighting. And it's dangerous. Because the moment you start questioning your own reality, your own feelings, your own memory of what happened, you become vulnerable. You start shrinking. You start apologizing for things you never even did. And that's exactly how emotional control works. So let me remind you of something sacred. Needing help is human. But being told you need help just to shut you down, just to shame you, just to shift the blame, that's not support. That's an emotional attack. And when it comes from your own child, it cuts deeper than anything else. Because they know exactly where your soft spots are. If a conversation leaves you feeling like you've lost your grip on truth, like you're always the one at fault, like your words only matter when they match someone else's story, you have every right to step back. You are not required to stay emotionally available to someone who uses your love against you. And if you're still here, still nodding, still listening, maybe quietly holding back tears or remembering something that hurt, I want to say something to you, something that may feel long overdue. You deserve respect. Not just tolerance. Not just polite responses. Real respect, the kind that sees your heart, your effort, and your years of sacrifice. The kind that honors your presence. The kind that listens, even when it disagrees. Because let's be honest. You are the reason your child is even here today. And I know, some of this may have stirred old wounds. Maybe even recent ones. Maybe you've been carrying memories you don't talk about with anyone. That's okay. Acknowledging that pain doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. It means you're finally ready to stop carrying it silently. It means you're ready to start putting yourself first. Not because you've stopped loving your children, but because you've started loving yourself again. So, where do you go from here? You begin by honoring how you feel. You stop sweeping things under the rug just to keep the peace. You give yourself permission to draw the line. Maybe that means fewer phone calls. Maybe it means saying no to last-minute demands. Maybe it means having one clear, final conversation that begins with, "I will not accept being spoken to that way anymore." And maybe, in time, they'll come around. Maybe they'll see what they couldn't see before. But even if they don't, you will have chosen dignity over damage. You will have chosen peace over people-pleasing. And my friend, that is one of the most powerful decisions you can make at this stage in life. Because you've earned your rest. You've earned your voice. And you deserve to spend your years surrounded by people who value you. Not people who question your worth. If this message has spoken to your heart, if it's helped you see things more clearly, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. You never know who might be reading and feeling the exact same pain, in silence. And if you found this helpful, please give the video a like. And subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. We're here to bring you real, honest conversations. The kind that help you stand taller, live better. And most of all, love yourself again. Here's to protecting your peace. To honoring your worth. To walking forward, with your head held high. Because you are not alone. You are not powerless. You are a person of deep experience. Of wisdom. Of love. And you deserve a life that reflects that. Here's to living your best life. At any age. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay strong.